ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਖਾਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਨੈਸ਼ਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਐਂਡ ਬੋਰਡਰਸ ਬਿੱਲ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਬਿੱਲਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਿੱਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੁਝ ਯੂਕੇ ਦੇ ਸੰਸਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਕੁਝ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਵੈਲ ਨੋਨ ਲੋਕ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਬਿੱਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਫੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਬਿੱਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੈਂਪੇਨਸ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਆਉਣ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ 27 ਫਰਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਆ ਸੋ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਭਰਾ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਅਮਰਿਤਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਢੇਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਭਾਜੀ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ
Okay, so just to start off with, welcome everybody to KTV. We apologise that we've been running slightly late, but we're here now, so we've got the next, let's say, 45 minutes or so to have your time. So we're going to try to make this informal, educational, and for the panel to educate us and our community, and obviously the viewership that is watching here today. So in terms of the panel that is there, we've got Bhavini Patel, Marvina Newton, we've got Chantal Lunt, and we've got Imran Khan. These are from well-known established organisations within the UK, and I think my first question is going to be to any of them. Most likely Marvin is going to answer this one. So my question is, what are kill the bills? What bills do you essentially want to kill and why? So please educate us. I want this to be informal, and let's go for this. Thank you, Marvina. Over to you.
So I want to say thank you so much to having us in this space and us being able to work together in sharing this platform to kill this bill. So when it comes to Kill the Bill campaign, it's all around killing the police and crime sentencing bill and the Nationality and Borders bill, with any other bill that is created that takes our voice and influence away. So I've got my sisters in the space and my brothers in the space that are going to highlight some of the other bill. But I'm going to like to talk to you about one of the bills that we're really, really scared about right now, which is the police and crime sentencing bill, which actually makes it a criminal offence for anyone to be involved in protest. We also have the Nationality and Borders bill, which Chantal is going to go into a little bit more details around. And the Nationality and Borders bill, in a nutshell, will restrict access to asylum by introducing a two-tier kind of approach on the entry of people coming into the UK. But what's even more scary about the Nationality and Borders bill, the clause 9 actually demonises people from the people who are already citizens in this country. So clause 9 is framed around the state secretary being able to take away your nationality without even giving you an opportunity to contest. It also gives the power to identify the terms of that is so broad and vague that anything can happen. She can decide to deport you as an activist or even as someone committing a minor offence and remove and make you stateless in this country. I'm going to go to my sister Chantal to talk about some of the other bills that are underneath the KTB killing the bill.
Yeah,
Chantal, thank you.
Yeah, so here, if we could just go to Chantal. So Chantal's going to talk to us about what Marvina just mentioned. So Chantal, it's over to you.
Hi. So yeah, as Marvina's sort of touched on, there's a number of pieces of legislation that are on the way through Parliament as we speak in a quite late stages within Parliament. And the two key ones Kill the Bill are focusing on are the police crime sentencing and the courts bill. Something to note is that although we did win as an organisation for the bill on a number of amendments, there's still some really harmful parts of this bill which haven't been thrown out of Parliament yet. So we are still fighting for the right to hold noisy and annoying protests, which is basically all protests. There's still the risk that Parliament Square, which is where a lot of protests happen, can be made a no-go area for protesters. And protesters are still at risk of facing up to 10 years in prison for holding said noisy and annoying protests or the touching or defacing statues. And the GRT community are still massively at risk and having their whole lifestyle criminalised because of legislation which is restricting movements and restricting people's ability to reside in vehicles in public spaces. Um, and if this law is enforced, it means that travellers, for instance, could have their vehicles impounded by the police, and every day that vehicle's in an impound centre, it's incurring a cost, so it's costing them it to keep it there, and they have to pay to have the vehicle released. But we're not just talking about someone's vehicle; this is somebody's home as well. So they could have their homes removed just for sleeping in a public space, as they've always done for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Nationality and Borders Bill is particularly concerning because we already know that the Home Office targets disproportionately Jamaican, Nigerian, and communities of colour with deportations,
Yeah.
particularly for low-level offences. So up until recently, there were people being deported who'd lived here since they were 8 years of age for low-level offences that they committed as children, yet they were being tried as adults and deported. Even after the court had actually proven that this was unlawful, the Home Office had still chartered flights back to Jamaica, and then it's really hard to get people back into the country once they've been deported. The UK government have spent £25 million building a prison to house in Jamaica people who are deported from the UK. And so there's just really harmful pieces of legislation going through. But the Nationality and Borders Bill is basically, if the government can prove that you are entitled to citizenship anywhere else, they can revoke the UK part of your citizenship, and they don't even have to tell you that they're doing it. So when we saw those raids in Scotland where they'd struck early in the morning or in the middle of the night and tried to get people on planes, because again, it's really hard to fight for people once they've been taken out of the country. When we saw that happen, that is what could potentially happen here. People who didn't even think that they could be deported, the government will find out that you have this dual nationality, will work out that they can take away the British part of your nationality, and then without even telling you, can deport you. And that's not trying to scare anyone, that's the reality. That's based on what they are already doing. So they're clearly preparing for it on a larger scale because they're dedicating millions of pounds to building prisons. It's clearly going to be targeted at minority communities, and it's making our citizenship unstable, and it's kind of putting this conditionality to British citizenship in force. It's a racist piece of legislation, let's call it what it is. The Nationality and Borders Bill and the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill are massively aimed at minority communities, and they are racist pieces of legislation.
I've got a
So I
question
think my
here.
next question is going to be to any of the panel. So essentially, I mean, in terms of the government will, so what you've said is great, but the government will most likely say that it's for terrorists. I mean, surely that's who it's for, terrorists or people who have committed great crimes. So why is it a concern for all of us? I mean, some of us amongst this group are activist organizations. So why and how does the Nationality and Borders Bill kind of affect us? Because clearly this is a democracy, and we should trust our government and the Home Secretary, Priti Patel. So why are we scared? Or are we scared, or what's the issue? So that's to either Bhavini or Imran, whoever wants to take that. It's your shout now. Thank you.
I can speak to that. So really, what I want to be getting clear to all our community members, every one of you is at risk, because the expansive nature of this bill means that they're not saying that what the police bill, the combination of the police bill and the Nationalities and Borders Bill means that we know that they target black and brown people more. So the combination means that if a brown and black person or any other minority is walking down the street, the police can stop and search you and have no reason to do so. They don't have to provide one, and they can interrogate you, right? So on top of that, the Nationalities and Borders Bill means that, like me, let's not even talk about me because I'm vocal, I'm an activist, and people might say, well, activists deserve it. Let's just talk about every day, my uncle and auntie or my nieces and nephews, where they're walking down the street, they can be approached by the police and being asked to give their name, their address, and any details that without any suspicion So they will be targeting community members randomly. And on top of that, if they deem this, if the state deems that they want to deport you, they can do. So even if my nieces and nephews are born in this country and they have done nothing, they've never spoken out, they've never spoken to any political party or anything. So it's not just about political activists of any description. It's the everyday person is also at risk of this. And they say, oh, but we won't be targeting you guys. Funnily enough, that bill is so open that today they may come for the people that are vocal, but tomorrow they can come for you. And we see this in Brexit. We see the rise of racism in this country. And we see the rise of racism within the Conservative Party. So we should be very fearful that they are actively becoming for us. And they may not come for you straight away when the bill passes in March, but in the coming months and the coming years, they absolutely will be using this bill to remove all of us. And remember that to be a British citizen is not a protection. It means that also if your parent or grandparent was born abroad, that's enough. You only have to have your DNA linked abroad for them to have the right to remove your citizenship without warning and without reason. This is terrifying times, guys.
I think my next question links into this. So now they don't have to actually give you notice, or they could say that you're in a country where they couldn't reach you. And it's because of that they're bringing in Clause 9. Has there ever been a case where they, sorry, just give me a second, sorry. Has there ever been a case where they've given notice and then they've actually got it wrong? So with giving notice, have they actually got it wrong in the past? For example, the Windrush generation and previous cases, could someone kind of just give us some information of previous cases where an individual citizenship has been revoked and then they've challenged the Home Secretary and the government have actually said, yeah, we made a mistake. And now this may be the reason why they don't actually have to actually notify you. Can someone speak about the Windrush generation and what happened? Thank you.
I think me and Chantal might be able to shed some light about this. Anytime anyone wants to think about if this can happen, this is sounding like a lie, this is sounding too far-fetched, I want you to think about Windrush. Windrush, the government in this country invited people who were British, who they colonized, to come and work for them. And when they were done with them, they wanted to discard them. And in the dead of night, we didn't know until the scandal came out. They were deporting, hundreds of people for different reasons. And like Chantal will give you some of the tactics and the stories of using conviction or using stuff. And people that had not even committed any crime. Being made stateless and being sent to a country that you've never lived in is the most cruelest thing you can do, where you have no physical contact. And I think we need to really elaborate on this part of it's down to the State Secretary, Priti Patel. And I want to say this before I even go into detail. Not all skin folks are kin folks. Not all people that look like us care about us. And Priti Patel is showing her true colors by creating and allowing this racist bill. I want you to keep using the word. It's a racist, draconian, authoritative bill that it's there to really be anti-refugee, anti-asylum seeker, and also making us a second-class citizen. I think with the Windrush generation, it's something that till today still causes so much pain. Lots of people try to fight it when they were told that you're no longer a British citizen. People are still not even allowed back into this country, if I'm correct. Chantal, I don't know if you wanted to highlight a little bit more about the Windrush generation.
Yeah, just to give you some context, the government basically did not issue any paperwork to people who were granted leave to remain, who were the Windrush generation. And in 2010, it destroyed the landing cards of Windrush migrants. And it then said to the Windrush generation, prove that you are entitled to be here. Whereas when they brought everyone over, it was, you're part of the Commonwealth, you are naturally citizens. It then put the onus on people who were, in the 60s and 70s to provide evidence, which is it could be like a little scrap of paper to prove that they were supposed to be here. I mean, how many people would still have that kind of paperwork, especially when the Home Office destroyed its own paperwork and made a point of not actually issuing people with the documents they would need to prove that they had leave to remain. And I speak as someone who's worked for the Home Office in the past. Even as someone who has lived and worked here, it is hard to sometimes provide that paper trail. So, for instance, if you're self-employed, you haven't been using your national insurance number, all of these things are things that the government look for. It's a lot easier now that we've got digital records, but can you imagine at a time when it was a little yellow card or a little piece of paper, and the Home Office made a point of destroying that? So we have in living memory examples of people who've lived here since childhood and since being really, really young, who got a knock on the door, and it's a particular tactic of the Home Office to do middle of the night, extractions, and to knock at times when the community around them won't be awake and won't be able to fight for them. Because as we saw in Scotland, if the community become aware, then they will literally surround a vehicle and stop you from taking someone. But if they strike in the middle of the night, once they've got somebody out of the country, that person might never come back. They could die of shock once they get there. But there is examples in living memory of this government deliberately destroying evidence that people had leave to remain in this country and then deporting them from this country. So we're warning you not of something that might happen, but something that has already happened and could continue to happen at an even greater rate, especially given that we know that they're warming up by building prisons in places like Jamaica. And it's not even people who have committed criminal acts, it's for anybody and for anyone who's deemed a threat to this government. And as we know, legislation around activism has been blurred, so that activists who are lawful are deemed a threat by this government. So this is a very real crisis, and it's something that we have, unfortunately, examples of in living memory of people being torn away from their homes and their families, all because they can't find the paperwork that the government destroyed themselves.
But Chantal, people might just then look at this as that I'm not a criminal. If I'm not a criminal and I'm not a protester and I'm not an activist, because I'm just thinking about a conversation with my mom this morning where she just said, this has nothing to do with me. Nationality and Borders Bill and Kill the Bill, I just mind my business. Can you really just highlight a little bit about how it doesn't matter if you're a criminal or you're a protester or you're an activist, because people are not engaging with it, thinking that it's something else?
We live in an era that's a little bit like Minority Report. We have a very risk-averse government, and I speak as someone who's a former police officer as well. So they will have intelligence records that they don't even have to disclose unless you have a court order for them to do so. And so you might not deem yourself a threat, but if you've Googled something, or if you are someone who is likely to join a trade union, or if you are someone who knows someone who might one day stand up and say this is wrong, then they could have reason to call you a threat or to believe that you are a threat. Their definition of a threat is very, very loose, and this is why these bills are particularly harmful, because they don't define what a threat is. So what one person could consider a threat, like I don't consider a Black Lives Matter activist who's out on the street saying, I don't want the police to kill black people anymore, a threat to anything. But we are very much deemed a threat by this government because we're a threat to the racial order and to the social order. So as people of colour, our existence and our resistance to any oppression in 2022 was standing up and saying, even if you don't stand on the street and say it, even if you just say it from a position that you are in, we will not be oppressed anymore. That is a threat to the current racial order and to the systems within this country as they stand. So you might not consider yourself a threat or an activist because you've never been to a protest, but the government's own definitions of threats are completely different. And as we've seen with the Windrush generation, they weren't sending criminals back. They were sending hard-working people who had come to build this country up. That's who they were sending back. And this is kind of a legislation that will very much just be the temperature checker for other legislation. So if they can get this through, and if we don't kick up a fuss about this, then they'll just push more through, and it will just become a really arbitrary piece of legislation that is just rooted in the whims of a Home Office that seems to hate minority people in this country.
Okay, so I think I'm just going to, so in terms of, I'm a co-host on this today, but I'm also representative of Sikh Council UK. So from our perspective, or from my perspective, I would say that we had our own kingdom, the Sikh kingdom, so the Sikh Raj, and it was colonialized, it was taken over, the annexation of Punjab occurred, and Prince Dalip Singh was brought to England. His daughter, Sir Sophia Dalip Kaur, she was followed by the MI5, and she actually led or was part of the suffragette movement as well. So a protest which nowadays within the police bill, they want to start protesting, or they want to start putting clampdowns on how much noise you can have, what time you can start, what time you can end, and all of that kind of stuff. So going forwards, I feel as a personal Sikh individual here, that if they didn't invade our lands, perhaps we wouldn't be here. And after invading all of our lands, let's say to an extent, and taking the wealth of our land and of our kingdom, now it's a stage that we're here and there's a problem, because many people are describing this, and also some of the peers of the House of Lords, as a two-tier system or two-tier citizenship, that we will be second-class citizens. And I think I'm going to come to Imran now. I just want to hear a bit more about Sunday, the protest, what's happening, a bit more in depth on the Nationality and Borders Bill. But I'm going to start with a quotation that the government wrote. So the government has said, deprivation on conducive to the public good grounds is rare, has been possible for over a century. It comes with a right of appeal and is used against people like terrorists to keep the public safe. Clause 9 doesn't change any of that. It simply is about how someone is notified. What would you have to say about that, Imran? And also, give me some background, Nationality and Borders Bill, if you want to, in terms of citizenship deprivation. Sunday, where is it starting? Where is it going to end? What's the plan, and where are we going forwards from this? And if anyone else wants to come in after Imran or at the same time, let's kind of bounce back from each other on this. Thank you. Kieran, after this is going to be your question, so stay ready. Thank you.
Mavina and Chantal saying, just to give a little bit more context to this, like the audacity of this government has been such that even when courts have said such people should not be deported, the government has basically disobeyed, broken the law in effect, and deported those people anyway. So what they're saying, the audacity is that even the institutions of the state cannot protect us, right? And we have to also understand understand the context that this party, the Tory party, for a long time now, since Theresa May was Home Secretary, that's a decade ago, have constantly said citizenship is not a right, it is a privilege. This is obviously against international law, and it's against the common sense that we have known to be normal. When we gain citizenship in this country or another, it is a right. You're born with it. You sign documents with it. It is something that stays with you and something that secures your access to human rights and civil rights in this country. And by saying that it's a privilege, that's exactly what they have done over time. In 2006, legislation was passed to make it to enable the government to strip citizenship based upon issues of public good, issues around national interest, and really broad and bizarre terms and far-reaching terms. For example, unacceptable behaviour. But I really want to focus on the what's it called, the foreign interest part, because we all know Priti Patel. Her politics is something of Hindu nationalism. It is something that essentially a marginalized. It is in effect a fascist ideology. Something that has a situation where you now have talks of genocide, open genocide by the ruling party put out on Twitter, right? And that's not just about Muslims. It is Christians and Sikhs in that country. That's the politics of Priti Patel. So it's no surprise we have a party that is racist, a Home Secretary that is linked to Hindu nationalists, fascists of abroad, and she's using legislation to essentially open doors for reasons of diplomatic interest, for foreign relations, and to cause a situation where whether it's India or another situation where particular people can be stripped of their citizenship, extradited, and left stateless and stranded. Okay, that's the severity that we're dealing with. And just to kind of touch up, and I'll come back to clause 9 in a second. People like me right now, we're safer than people who are not active. The people that have been deported, whether Windrush or otherwise, they are people who are not active now, right? We have a certain buffer of safety. Why? Because if I disappear tonight, if Chantel or Malvina disappear tonight, people would know. People would mobilize and activate on the back of that, right? But they haven't targeted us. They targeted people who don't have that network, that access to other active individuals, and they use them as a test case. So if you want to be safe, you have to be active now before this is used in a very broad terms. Okay, so and that kind of brings me back to what's happening with this legislation now. And when it comes to the provisions when it comes to refugees and migrants are horrible. But just to focus on citizenship and clause 9, what that does is basically say for the very reasons I said before, the Home Secretary can just literally, with a strike of a pen, take away your citizenship, even if you don't have another citizenship out there in the country, out there in the world, without notice. At least before, it was bad enough before, but at least before you had notice and you had means to fight that, you won't even get notice on most of these occasions. You have no, you will be out there in the world, or even here in the UK, you will be stripped of your citizenship and you will have no means to even appeal that until it's too late, right? And that means that's our last line of defense. That's like literally the nail in the coffin. There is literally nothing that individuals can do when they implement clause 9, right? There's just literally nothing. And so that's the difference of this legislation. We have, as minorities, have allowed our citizenship to slowly become privilege, as the Tory party have said they would, and this is the last nail in the coffin. And so this is basically a last stand when it comes to that. And this demo that's happening on the 27th, this isn't the only action. There are other actions, and there are other lots of different lobby groups trying to lobby the laws. There's other actions that are happening, but we need people to be out there in the streets because that creates pressure, it creates media pressure, and it means that people like us can escalate going forward to defend our collective rights.
Amazing. Can I just add to that if it's okay? I just wanted to kind of say everything you've just said is absolutely spot on, but I want people to understand that it's likely the public support is on side with us on this. There was an article in The Guardian yesterday that basically titled "Attacks on Woke Charities Has Backfired." So, you know, the RNLI, when they were attacking the RNLI, the lifeguards for going into the channel and saving refugees who were in trouble, the far right waged this huge campaign of hate against them, and it increased public outpourings of support towards them. It's the same for the National Trust, who did a big campaign about rebuilding trust and appraising all of its sites that had links to slavery and encouraging communities of colour to use its site. The far right mounted a counter campaign and the public rejected it. So at every moment when these acts of racism have become really, really visible, the public has always been on side. So it's really key to understand and to get on board with, campaigns like those fighting against this Nationality and Borders Bill, come to these protests, because the key is, as has been alluded to make us feel like we're on our own and to make us feel like what the government is saying is what, Joe Bloggs on the street agrees with. But all of the data coming out at the moment, all of the support that charities who are speaking out against racism have had from the public, is that the public reject racism and the public remember what happened with Windrush. So the worst thing that we can do at the moment is sit at home, feel alone and not do anything. If we think they're coming for us, and if you want to stand by the people that they are coming for, then join campaigns, really get out on the streets and fight this, because that is the best way to keep ourselves safe, coming together, resisting this and making Joe Bloggs on the streets aware of what they're actually doing to us.
And I think when you say all of this, and I'm really applauding this conversation, I'm going to speak on a personal level and say to aunties, uncles, to grandmas, to brothers and sisters, it doesn't matter where we come from, how far we know that we're proud of our heritage and our culture, and we're proud of our identity. We have a right to actually challenge the system when we know that we're being treated in a racist fashion. We have a right to speak out and no longer be silent in any way possible. I know with us being colonized sometimes, we go into this space where we forget who we were based on the fact that our faith, our religion, our speech, and our everything was taken away from us. But I'm telling you that what this bill has done is that it's made us form unlikely alliances. I've got brothers and sisters who are Muslim, and I've got brothers and sisters who are Sikh, and I've got brothers and sisters who are Christians or no faith whatsoever, coming together and saying enough of this racistness, enough of this system. And that's what you're going to see on Sunday. You'll see a collection, and this is one thing I love about Kill the Bills and killing these bills, is that we come together irregardless of our causes, to say enough is enough to this corrupt government. Enough is enough in the sense of when you look at the fact that you must know someone who's a refugee. You must know someone who's a migrant. You must know someone who's an asylum seeker. And these individuals, you supporting anyone that might be in the process of trying to get their legal status as a refugee or asylum seeker, this bill also targets you. It says that it's illegal for you to do that. I think, Chantal, how long is it for someone who is supporting someone who is illegal in this country?
I'm sure that's a 10-year sentence, if not more. Supporting someone or helping someone, I see they've got around a 10-year sentence now.
And
But it's longer
if
than a
it's
rape sentence, put it that way.
It's not even a rape sentence, and I want people to understand this, hear this. Supporting someone who's a refugee or an asylum seeker means that you get a longer sentence than someone that might rape someone. Then imagine those who are, I know the setting of the boats are being allowed to support asylum seekers and refugees, but some of them, anyone who saves, when we see dead bodies of refugees on the seas and we're so sad. Imagine if you jumped in the water as a complete stranger going to save these people. You're now a criminal. I want you to sit with that. You're now a criminal. Imagine you know that uncle or auntie who fled Afghanistan and came to this country and you decided to give them a place to stay in your house. You're now a criminal. I want to paint the picture of every relation that you have that came while they're trying to get their papers sorted. And we don't publicly say this. They're about to criminalize you for that. That's your loved one. And now you might say, it's not, I don't really care about Black Lives Matter. I don't really care about all these things. I'm not speaking to you as my brothers and sisters. And I'm speaking to you with the faith that we have inside of us. When we see evil, we should speak out on it. And I know like Bhavini is all around building bridges and building this connection and really going into our communities and trying to get everybody to come. I want to say really big thanks to like the Sikh Council UK with the work they're doing, putting buses and really trying to mobilize people and remove those barriers. I'm now saying to those who are watching this, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because your silence is consent. If you think they come for me today, they're not going to come for you. We know how the system works. Priti Patel doesn't care. She's so privileged in her seats, she doesn't care. I'm going to pass it to Bhavini to like bring some thoughts about what we can do in our communities to build that unity and come together.
So really, I want people to be picking up their grandmothers, grandparents, aunties, uncles, nieces, nephews, mums and dads, right? We know what family is. Our communities know what community is. And the power that we have because we look after each other is how so many migrants like myself and my parents and a lot of your family, when they first came here, we looked after each other. And then eventually people got their passports and got their jobs and everything, right? It's how we came to be in this country. It's our network that helped us survive. and it's going to be our network that helps us survive this next chapter that's coming ahead, right? So when we are in this country, we didn't separate. We knew if we had Hindi as a language or any language, we could speak to each other, whether you be Hindu or Muslim or Sikh. We looked after each other in this country. And that's what's needed again. We need to all come together onto the streets. And I've been sitting in community, in the Bangladesh community and in the mosques here in London and the temples. And when it breaks my heart. I'm heartbroken that I have to tell my community and all my brothers and sisters and neighbors what's happening, because it's unbelievable, isn't it? People think I couldn't understand it. I couldn't believe it. For a long time, it took me many, many days to process that this is real. And it's going to be a heartbreak to a lot of people in our community. But I need you to do that journey. I need you to read the information. I need you to understand it. And then I need you to share it and then come on the streets, because it's not just about me. It's about you. And it's about the children, and it's about the future children of your children. And every one of us has worked so hard to help build this country and build our futures and build the future generations' futures. Why should we at this stage not stand up in our duty to protect each other and to protect the future generations? Because it's a duty now. And we know what happened in Uganda for the Indians, right? This is the same thing that they're going to do to us in this country. They're just going to sweep us up all together and get us out before a resistance arrives. However, like Imran said, that if we all become out on the streets and do the work and be counted, they won't come for us. It's only when we're silent and we're sleeping in our beds thinking we're safe because nobody knows. I can tell you now, I live in Tottenham as well, right? And in Tottenham, they came with police vans in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night, and people screaming and shouting. We didn't understand what was going on, even though we were told maybe a week or two before in the news that this was changing, but we couldn't believe it. Only when we saw it for our own eyes. But by the time we saw it for our own eyes, it was too late. So don't wait to see it with your own eyes. Take the information, believe it, and let's start acting together so that we are safe.
I think I'm just going to come in now on what Bhavini said. So the context is, we've got, obviously at the moment we're speaking about the Nationality and Borders Bill, but before that you've got the Policing Bill, Nationality and Borders Bill. There's going to be a possible change to the human rights law or legislation, and even the election. So it's a grouping of all of these that the government are putting in certain clauses, changing things, and not saying we've got foresight, but you can see which direction it's going because it's from the same playbook that other governments have used. Now, I'm just going to say one more thing on this. So we've got about 5 minutes. I'm going to need us to wrap up shortly. But diplomatic relations, unacceptable behaviour are wide terms that are being used by the government. I mean, what does that actually mean? For us, diplomatic relations, yes, India and England have got brilliant diplomatic relations. However, we've got one of our brothers, Jagtar Singh Johar, currently in India, and it's been 4 years and he's not actually been formally charged with anything. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary who's getting all of these powers, she tried to extradite 3 West Midlands Sikhs in September, October. In court, India couldn't provide anything, so the case was dropped. Now, them guys, potentially, due to diplomatic relations, could be extradited. It's a case that went on for 10 years. No evidence 10 years ago, no evidence now. However, due to diplomatic relations, which is such of a wide term, we could see ourselves. I mean, some of us are activists on here, we could be deported. What are diplomatic relations? The terminology that is being used is so wide that there's no explanation, because it comes down to, it's not the courts, so you're not going to have a case in court. It's at the discretion of the Home Secretary. And I think that's the worry amongst all of us, because it's down to one person. And you've got no time frame to appeal. Or they say 28 days, but that's if they're giving you the information that we're going to serve you with an order. And even if you do appeal, let's say at a later stage, you'll be abroad, you will have no recourse to anything here, and the evidence will be in a private court, and they won't even give you the evidence. So you don't even know what you're fighting or what you've apparently done, which has been the case with an individual that was in Bangladesh for 4 years. He's won his case. He's come back here. They said that he was dealing with terrorism or something in Syria. However, he was working for an agency, and he fought the government 4 years on. He's back here, but the problem is now a combination. So Bhavini, what she said is absolutely correct. There's emotions at play, because when you're linking everything together, which is what she's doing, you can see it going in a bad direction, and a direction that we don't actually want. So we've got to slowly start wrapping it up. I'd like to come to Kiran for a question. Imran, Bhavini, Chantal, and leave it with Marvina at the end. Again, I've got about 5 minutes only, so I apologise to everybody that's watching that we did start slightly late. Sorry. Over to you guys now. Kiran.
Yeah, I think all my questions, I feel like they've just been asked. That's why I sat quiet. But here, I think if we talk about every individual person that is watching this show, this is an issue that concerns all of us, especially if you look at all the bills that are coming out, from the policing bill to the Nationality and Borders bill, and the possible changes to the human rights legislation. These things are a concern for all of us, especially because we are being taken away from our democracy with these type of laws. And I am quite sure that there could be some more laws coming out that takes us away from our democracy. And if there's anyone else that would just like to take a minute just talk about our democracy, and if you guys think it's being taken away, because in my opinion, I believe we are being taken away from our democracy. And democracy is that thing. If we talk about our families prided Britain for its democracy, it prided Britain for the work, the equal treatment, a lot of things. But now, if we look at our times, I would say that the Conservative parties, they're bringing away us from our democracy. So would anyone like to say anything about this?
I would. In that Putin took 7 years to do what this government is about to do in 1 year. So when we talk about democracy shifting, we're going to be in an authoritarian country very soon. So this is about every individual, not just minority communities. Every person in this country is going to be experiencing a level of state intervention and lack of freedom on the streets and their voice. So this isn't just about us, it's about everybody. And the thing is, they're going to come for us first. That's the only difference. The first people they're going to come for is us, then they'll come for the others. So it's not if, it's when. And we know there is so much power and beauty in people coming to the streets and resisting. So this Sunday is the essential day for you to all come and meet each other, because we're going to have to look after each other. And the only way to do that is if we all come together and actually find each other.
Thank you. Marvina, Imran, Chantal, Marvina, any words?
Chantal, you can go. Like, I'll let my brothers and sisters go first, and I'll come at the end. Chantal and Imran.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it resonates that you're speaking about democracy being taken away at a time that they're also taking away our right to vote if you don't have ID, something that is, notoriously hard to come by for marginalised and minority communities. So they are attacking our democracy on all levels, and I just want to encourage people to fight back by protesting, fight back by taking to the streets on Sunday, fight back by following activists who are fighting against this, whether it be citizenship as a right or kill the bill. Join the resistance, because what this country are notorious for doing, as Bhavini has alluded to, is testing things out on the communities which they think are easy targets, like minority communities. But once they come for us, you are sure that they are going to come for you too. So even if you're not fighting for us, fight for yourself, but join the resistance and don't take this one lying down.
Imran, over to you. Just a little bit about the coalition as well on Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely all of this is corrosive, dealing with trying to demolish the very pillars of our democracy. And I would say, wherever you can, whether it's Seats Council UK, whether it's Kill the Bill, whether it's Citizenship for the Right, whatever organisation you prefer, just get involved and get organised. and that you will be playing your part. It is so critical that everybody does at this time. For this Sunday, we'll be marching from the Home Office 12 o'clock, 12 noon, and we'll be moving towards Parliament Square. And like you see in your screen, you have coaches. Contact Sikh Council UK, or the contacts on there, and be part of this. And this can be if you're not used to this can be a first thing for you. This get connected, as Chantel and Bavina said, like just get involved and join any organization, and this will be a brilliant way to do so. There'll be loads of organizations there. You'll be spoiled for choice, and it'll be fun, it'll be energizing, and it will help us escalate for the future that we are all fighting for together.
Thanks. And I want to say something. Great Britain would not be great without the contribution of people like us. So I'm going to say this to just end this really, really quickly from my side. First, they came for the communists, but I did not speak out because I'm not a communist. Then they came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came from the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I wasn't a Jew. But then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak out for me. That's the point here. We need to come out. We need to speak out. And we need to stand united against this racist Nationality and Borders Bill, police bill, the electorate bill, and also the Human Rights Reform Bill. We can do this together, and I want to see us working. So go to KTB, go and order some resources, go to the website, and make sure you're passing the information to other people. And see you on Sunday on the streets.
Thank you. So I just want to wrap up, and then I'm going to put it over to Kieran. So just a disclaimer from the channel and from Sikh Council and these organisations. Citizenship is a right. So that's the coalition group that's actually kind of getting everything together with the support of Kill the Bill, Sikh Council, various other organisations. The post, you've got about 20, 30 organisations on that. Great. So follow all of these organisations. Citizenship is a right is on Twitter, Facebook, elsewhere. Follow Kill the Bill, follow everybody who's actually trying to do something to help you. From the council and from KTV, it's just a disclaimer that we are not talking about protesting, causing riots. It's going to be a peaceful protest, family event. We're going to have food, we're going to have chants, we're going to have a good time, but we are going to let the government know that we are all in it together, whether you're atheist, Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Jain, any other religion or not a religion. We don't particularly care because this affects everybody, because it doesn't affect religion as such, although certain religions are targeted. This affects our fundamental rights, our human rights, and who we are as individuals. Over to Kieran, if you can just wrap up in Punjabi and just let everybody know what's happening. And that's it from me now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So first, I want to thank everyone for joining in to this program today. And if you go into post Punjabi, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਨੈਸ਼ਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਅਬੋਰਡਸ ਬਿੱਲ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਕੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣ ਲਈ ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਮੇਨ ਚੀਜ਼ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੈਸ਼ਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਅਬੋਰਡਸ ਬਿੱਲ ਇਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਮਸਲਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਮਸਲਾ ਇਹ ਬੰਦ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਮਸਲਾ ਆ ਸੋ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮੈਂ ਕਹੂੰਗੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਦਰਸ਼ਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਸੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਹੋਣ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕੋਚਿਸ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਆ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਮੈਦਿਕ ਤੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਅਰਜਨ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਤੋਂ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਾਬਾ ਪਾਕ ਐਵਨੀ ਸਾਊਥ ਹੋਲ ਤੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਕਵੈਂਟਰੀ ਤੋਂ ਸੋ ਹਰ ਪਾਸੇ ਕੋਚਾਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰੂੰਗੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਸਾਡੀ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੀਏ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਅਸਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਪੈਣਾ ਪਰ ਕੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੂਗੇ 8 ਤੋਂ 9 ਵਜੇ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਲਈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਣ ਲਈ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਭੇਟ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਬੁਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ
Thank you everybody. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you everyone. See you again.
Good night.
Okay.